Welcome, everybody, to the From Experience podcast, where we help you grow your business by learning from other people's experience. I'm Thomas Meister, and today we have the adventure lender, Sean Herrero from the Bay Area in Danville. I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Eric Peterson. Dude, you just got back from London. How was Cambridge?
It was phenomenal. I will tell anybody if you've never been to London or Cambridge, it's phenomenal. It's not what I expected. It was way better.
Okay, all right. I'm sure we'll get more about that. Sean, how are you doing today? What's going on in your world? How's the weekend?
Weekend was good. Running around with kids. Got my little guy's birthday coming up in 2 days. So 5-year-old birthday parties and whatnot. No London
Ooh,
for me. Very different experience, but yeah, it was great.
nice,
Well, one
cool. Have you? Go ahead.
Sean, one day you're gonna have to drop off that 5-year-old somewhere, and they're gonna be the next thing you know they're 20. So enjoy it while you got it.
I have a 19-year-old too, so I'm with you.
Oh, there you
There you go.
go.
Yeah,
There you
I got
go.
the spectrum 1915 5.
It's probably difficult leaving your kid in another country, Eric. To go
That
to
One of
would
the
be
most
college.
tough.
difficult things they've ever done.
There you go. No, cool. Sean, we met at the Forward event in Las Vegas, right? I think that you've created a really cool niche. Uh, I've heard a lot of people talk about it, which is it's one thing to create content for yourself to try and build like a leadership brand, right? A personal brand, but you're doing it for other people now, which is extremely cool. Like, first off, how did you get started in content creation, right? Like, where'd you get your inspiration? Like, what was your journey kind of getting into it?
Yeah, I think I was lucky. I mean, I was a skateboard punk kid in high school, and we were making videos back then. So I think that's kind of where, when did I first pick up a camera was back in high school, just playing around. And then really, Barry Habib is who got me into video for business purposes back in 2010. So
Oh,
anyone who's
wow.
like jumping on video now as, oh, this is new. It's not new. That guy's been doing it forever. And I was lucky to have him mentor me. And he's like, sorry, bud, you got to be on video. And I didn't want to, didn't like how I looked, didn't like how I sounded, which is what all of us say. And he's like, doesn't matter. It is what it is. You have to start. And then, I did it then. And then it really progressed. I'd say 2015 and on is when it really picked up.
Dang. I want to ask real quick. What was that like, back then when you first get started creating content?
I think it's the same as it is now. It sucked. Like you don't want to, it's that uncomfort. You have to get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? And it was overcoming that, but I'd say the process was far more difficult than it is now. Like I don't think I had an iPhone 2010.
Good point.
Yeah, so it was, webcam. There was no start and stop. It was always the awkward, is this recording? And then oh, like that was inevitable. You couldn't do anything about that. Well, you could, but it was much more complex than it is today. And then you get numb to it, and it just becomes second nature. And looking at this camera right now, in my head, I'm making eye contact with both of you. Like that's what I see is me
Yeah.
making eye contact with you guys. So it
So you're
changes,
looking at the camera right now. You're not even looking at the screen where we are
right?
right now. There you go.
Yep. Yep.
I started doing that. I did videography kind of when I was younger, like more photography professionally and a little bit of videography. So yeah, I feel like that comes more secondhand. But I definitely notice when people aren't looking at the camera myself, like when we're in a Zoom meeting or on Teams or something. Eric, are you looking at the screen or the camera? I can't
No,
tell.
I'm looking. Look, I know I mostly look at the screen, but I'm one of those people with ADD so bad that I'm looking at the camera, but then I see you guys moving at the bottom of the screen, and I want to keep looking at you and feel like I'm making great eye contact. But you know what's funny is I can't remember. I remember being at a conference and somebody. This was probably around that same time, around that 2010, maybe 2012, somewhere in there. And he was talking about video content, why it's so important. And he said the number one excuse I always get is I don't like the way I look or sound. And he's like, but it's the way you look and it's the way you sound. And it's just getting used to it. Like I said, it took Tom, believe it or not, to push me to do this because same reason. But
You're welcome.
once you get comfortable with that, what's that?
You're welcome.
Thank you. Once you get comfortable with that, the rest is pretty easy. But the different ways people make content is pretty interesting. Some go for obviously very funny, informative, like you just kind of name it. But I did want to ask you, tell us about the adventure lender. How did that come about, and what does that mean?
Yeah, so I came up with that, I guess probably 2016, 2017, I would say. And basically my Instagram, before that was me doing what I love to do. I would, it's probably 90% personal life. So I love rock climbing. I love free diving and spearfishing. I have to be moving. It's the ADHD in me. I have to be doing something. And that's kind of where people are like, whoa, you do all these really cool things. And I don't think they're really cool, just kind of normal to me. And everyone said how adventurous I was. And then when I became a mortgage advisor in 2017, and I was driving to an event in Tahoe, and I was thinking about, what should it be? Like, my friend Ben is Lend Pro, right? And I was just like, oh, that's clever. Like, he figured out a clever name for his Instagram that kind of shows what he does for a living, which is unique. And I just adventure lender popped into my head. I was like, oh, that's kind of catchy. Like, they almost rhyme. And that's what it is. And to me, it forces authenticity. I think lately I've been lendering more than adventuring, but it's like I need to, I owe myself some adventures. So I want to have that balance, but it's basically just a way for me to show here's who I am as a person. I think people want to work with people they can relate to or find interesting. Which is weird to say, but that's what I do. I like to adventure, and I'm a lender for a living.
Yeah, no, I think people. I mean, I guess Eric, to your point, and Sean, what you honed in on, which is being authentic to yourself, right? So your viewers are going to want to see you anyway. Like we just had Deborah Bird on, and I think one of my favorite clips, right? Because I created a clip so we could post it later, right? Like to send people to the video on YouTube. And one of my favorite ones where she talks about that she's kind of calling bullshit on people making that excuse now, which is that you don't look, you're worried about your looks or you're worried about how you sound. It's you just don't want to do it, right? You just don't want to put your head down and grind. I mean, it's only gotten easier to your point, like you just mentioned, right? For anyone listening, your phone has the camera you need, right? There's a million places to get it edited. You could freaking go on Fiverr if you are that like untech savvy and have somebody do it for you. So yeah, no more excuses, guys. Like you really can't pull that in 2022 today.
Well,
Um,
it was funny about her conversation too is she comes off as like that. She just looks like somebody who's super nice, very sweet. But when you get into the conversation, you can tell she's somebody that doesn't put up with your shit.
Yeah, 100%. I've met Deborah a couple times. Her and her sister are awesome. And but yes, there is a type A behind those bright blue eyes. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, I want to get to that because again, you're helping people with that content creation part of this. Um, so let me, I guess, ask like value creation through content creation because you're helping a lot of your partners with this. And so one of the things that I like to promote is a lot of people feel like rate, speed, like their experience, like you name it, right? Like those things are their value. At the end of the day, like that's your job, right? Like
Barrier of
I hope
entry.
you're good at your job, right? If you're not good for 30 days, guess what? They're not going to want to work with you after that. So why is it important in your opinion? Like, cause you're helping people today, right? Like, I don't know when the last content day you had was, but what are you kind of preaching right now to people who are getting into this? Like, why is it important?
Yeah, it's great. So this is what I've always said. Even when, before I became a mortgage advisor in 2017, when mortgage advisors were my clients, when I was a wholesale rep, um, I was like, great rates, great service. That's not good enough. That's barrier of entry. Like, okay, cool. You can do the bare minimum. So why should I use you? Right. And if you
Why
can't
you?
answer that question, then you're in trouble. And I would say that for this market specifically right now, because the pie is shrinking. So you need to grab much bigger pieces of it. Um, you can't really Instagram specifically has made it so easy to reach thousands of people with a short video that it's not an option. And pre-COVID, like before 2020, my whole way of getting in with real estate agents is I'm a marketer. I'm not a sales guy, I'm a marketer. And if I could teach you how to market, you'll do more business. I already know how to do my job. I'm really good at closing loans. I have great rates. I have great service. We're not going to talk about that because I'm so confident that piece of it. I'm going to show you how to do more. So it was all video messaging and marketing. And after, really the first week of March 2020, everyone was on Zooms. You had no choice to be on video anymore. Didn't matter how you looked, didn't matter how you sounded, you're on video. And where I dropped the ball is I thought after this, everybody would just be comfortable on doing this. And everyone is right back where they started. So I think that shortcutting the process is really how I'm helping people. I've spent a lot of money and a lot of time figuring out how to create videos for different media. The way you do YouTube is going to be different than the way you do Instagram or TikTok, the way you do video messaging instead of marketing. So if you're, I do updates throughout the transaction by video, that's going to be different. But if you understand the overall picture, you can shortcut the process. And that's what I try to do for people is, look, here's what you need. I've bought 10 mics. These 9 are fine, but this is the one you want. Just make it simple for them. And then it helps them grow their brand faster.
Definitely making it simple, I think, helps. I've given so many people a link to my Amazon uh like list
Yeah.
where it's like I created 3 tiers: level 1, level 2, level 3. How complicated do you want it? Most people, it's just get the USB stuff. Like,
Yep.
let's not get into the DSLR territory where you're barrier. It just raised the barrier to entry, to your point, and it's not necessary with so much quality people have. I wanted to ask real quick about managing the experience, because I feel like, back up just a little second, we were talking about those things that are kind of necessary and given, right? The end consumer, right? Like if we, think about our target audience, right? So I think for you, it's I guess who is your target audience for you personally, like at this stage of your career?
Yeah, good. So I'd say primarily three people. It's who I seem to help the most: real estate agents, first-time home buyers, and veterans.
Okay, awesome. Okay, cool. So obviously, and you just mentioned it, right? Like the whole 2020 thing, like it's over. You don't have a choice anymore. That's a shame that people are just reverting to their old ways, but I guess I'm not surprised. This basically is the equivalent of like wearing a suit now, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually a really good way to put it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people overthink it, but if you just keep it simple at the end of the day, it's like, would you show up to your client like, really important meeting with flip flops? Guess some people would, but I mean,
No, what's
depends on where
crazy
you
is
live. But
I think everybody for the most part is doing at least a bare minimum of a decent job at some of this content. But every once in a while, I'll see somebody post something that is so cringeworthy. You can tell that they're not comfortable. They don't know what to say, and it just doesn't land right. I'm sure that you've dealt with a few of those, but about how much time do you think it takes, or how many attempts before somebody starts to feel comfortable and it comes off a little bit more natural than anything else?
I think it depends on the person and then their consistency. So the more you do it, the better you'll get. Period. Right. But my mom is a mortgage lender, and she made a video that I saw on Instagram, and it was cringy for me to watch. My sister showed it to me, and I was like, I'm proud of her for trying. Right. But it just wasn't, the message was lost. And I was like, nobody, and the internet's very honest, right? Though it had one like, and it was from my wife, and it had like 160 people viewed it. And so I saw that as an opportunity to help her. And so I was like, there's a good story here. Like there's a really good message that could benefit a lot of people. I'm going to find it. And I extracted the story. I used Mortgage Coach to help me figure out what the story was. And it was basically rent versus own. These people spent $800,000 in rent over 23 years. They got kicked out of their house because the landlord wanted to cash in with the value increases we've seen. And if it wasn't for them getting kicked out, they never would have taken a step towards home ownership. So I basically extracted that story, wrote out, I hate the word script, but I wrote it out in short form way for her to say it and simplify the process. And I had her come to my office. We recorded, I think 3 or 5 short form videos. We did that one last. From the first video she did to that video, there was a transformation. So it only took
that's
3
better.
videos. And that video had 4,000 views within the first 2 hours. She had real estate agents reaching out to her. She's like, what do I do? They're messaging me and I don't know what to. I'm like, respond to
What do
them.
you
Like,
do?
that's a good thing. You have engagement. Congratulations. And I love that one because it was really my first moment of like, could this story be told in a more relatable way that'll benefit and help more people? And we found it and it worked.
Well, so for
Brilliant.
anybody that's going to watch this, let's take it step by step. Let's just say that I'm a realtor and I want to get into content. I just happen to be watching this. I'm like, okay, I'm going to make a video. Now that I've made it, what do I do with it? Who do I send it to? Like, walk us through that.
Yeah, can you tease that a little bit, Sean?
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, we got to the I made a video step. You don't need anything more than your iPhone. Remember, IMAX cameras were this big, and those were 4K cameras, and this is now a 4K camera. So you have no excuse of, once I get the good camera, I'll start recording. You have it in your pocket. So you've recorded your video on your cell phone. if you're working with a good editing company, and that's what I recommend, there's, to Thomas's point, there's a lot of them out there. I have one that I love that's really good with real estate. I simply upload to Google Drive. The editors then take it. They'll cut out the good parts. Sorry, let me back up. When you're recording the video, you want to tell the story in one cut, right? So you click start on the camera. You say what you want to say. You mess up. You say what you want to say. You mess up. Kind of play ping pong on that. And then you get to a point where you're like, oh, I'm so glad I'm done with that. That's when you click stop. So you have the whole video in one long block. That makes it easier for the editors to extract the good pieces. So the editor takes that long video, they look through it, they find the good takes, they make your little 1 minute or less video, hopefully 30 seconds or less video. They add the titles, they make it cute and fun. They send you the final version, and then you post it on whatever platforms you would like it to be seen on.
And there's probably companies to help with the posting too, I bet. Well, I know.
Yeah, I think there are, but I'm not a fan of that. I think that that's where you get lost with social media is, I think, because so many people are nervous and, I hate this when people say I'm not tech savvy. I'm like, are you username and password savvy? Because that's all this is. Yeah. You're not writing code. You're just clicking buttons. So what I've seen is when people start to outsource their social media, it becomes it's no longer authentic and it becomes somewhat disingenuous. You can tell that person is not doing it. So me personally, I'm not a fan of having somebody post on my behalf. I think it's better off if I outsource the editing. That's the longest portion of this process. Get rid of that, but be yourself on social media. My opinion. I could be wrong.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who say they're not tech savvy. I feel like Deborah even touched on that a little bit recently, but like, how do you? Because I would imagine you've had a number of people through your content days, and you just referenced that kind of transformation that really happens. But have you ever been stumped by someone? Like, maybe I'll ask a really mean question, but are there some people that just honestly shouldn't be on camera that you found and like they should just write blogs or something?
No, so that's a great question, and I had this last week. Actually, it was a week ago today. I went to a real estate office, was helping them. I did my workshop, like my presentation, and then I had 5 or 6 people that wanted to learn how to go through this process. The very last person of the day, this is a 1-hour time block. We chatted back and forth. We recorded a video, and typically, these short form videos end up having that, 3 to 7 minutes is typically what I see that long recording being that gets extracted. Hers was like 40 minutes. It took us that long to get through one edit. And what I found is when she would make eye contact with the camera, she would freeze. Like she lost her
everything.
She lost her body language. She lost her facial expression. And then she would mess up and she'd start talking to me again. And it was completely natural. And so I told her, I'm like, don't do this. I was like, do podcast style. Go pay money to a video studio that offers podcasts. There's one locally, so it worked out perfect. I said, you go in there with a colleague, real estate agent. You guys sit and have a chat. The cameras are there. You forget they're there. And then you'll have this long form video that you can extract short clips out of. You're going to do far better on that than you will in this, because it was night and day difference. It was, I'm frozen. And then she would look at me and be super animated. And so
in her own head, yeah.
But I told her, right? I think a lot of people would keep coaching her through. She's like, I've been paying this company, I forget how much, $1,000 a month to help me make videos. And I've posted none of them because I know this about myself. I'm like, then don't do it. Go do something that fits your style better.
Play to your strength.
I've noticed 2 things, and you can hit on both of them. One is, you can tell some people when they want to be scripted, but they're so much better when they free flow. They may run on a little bit longer. But the other is when you see somebody make a video, whether they're trying to make it funny or enjoyable or informative, and you can just tell it's not their personality, and it just doesn't land right. But what's the advice on both of those things?
That's a good point. That's a good question. So I like the idea of this scripting process to get started, but don't use somebody else's script, write your own. So it's your voice. And, it's almost, I tell people when you're writing out a script, and I hate calling it that, but a script, write it as if you're texting someone, not writing a paper in an email, because you want it to be the way you would speak to another person, right? So start there, because it will be your own voice, and then you're going to fumble less because you know what you want to say in these little short blocks. once you get comfortable with that and you're more comfortable talking to the camera directly, just have the idea and drop the script entirely. And then it becomes even more your voice. But it's kind of that baby step process. I mean, it's only 2 steps, but that's kind of what
Mhm.
and that's what I'm doing. I am trying not to write what I want to say out anymore. I just know the concept. I'll like play it through in my head. Okay, this is what I'm going to say. I'll say it to the camera. I'll probably screw it up a bunch of times, but I'll get there. And I've found it just comes out more naturally. And another thing that I do, like my personal trick when I'm recording videos, no matter what type of video it is I always start off smiling at the camera. So it's like I'll like take a breath, smile. If you take a big exhale through your nose, your natural smile comes out for some reason, and that smile kind of lasts through the first part of what you're saying, and your brain stops thinking about being on video because you're focused on the breath or something. I don't know how it works, but it works, and I've found that to be a good way to get over it.
Nice. One of the things, I forget where I heard this from, but I think if you tend to ask a certain more seasoned group of people, right? Like they're the ones who sometimes come up with the like I'm not tech savvy, and I heard somebody answer it like, "Wait, so when did you give up learning?" Right? Like you learned how to be a loan officer, right? Okay, so and you learned how to use a computer at some point, right? So you're just lazy, like because you don't want to learn. It's like I get it; it might be hard, but you know what? There's a lot of things that are hard. You just got to put in the work, and guess what? You'll get better. To your point, you just got to get the reps, I guess, right?
Yeah,
So with
and that's what I say is it's not we come up with reasons why we aren't doing things. Reasons are excuses. I don't have a good enough camera. I don't have the light. I don't have a studio. I don't like how I look. I don't like how I sound. Those aren't reasons to not start. Those are just excuses. And once you realize that, and again, to me, it really has become a non-negotiable. Like if you want to grow your business, people want to know who they're working with. So if for no other reason, give people the ability to meet you before they meet you. And I think that is one of the biggest reasons that I do it.
so for as long as you've been doing this and as much experience as you have, what what would you say is like the most recent game changer for you, whether it be equipment, process, like that kind of thing?
The mics. I think the sound is a big deal. And like I said, I bought a few, but I think the mic, that's what I tell everyone is don't go buy a camera. Don't buy a light. If you're going to spend money on anything, buy a microphone. That's been the biggest thing for me. Cause if I needed to without a light, I could just turn towards these windows and have nice soft light. I have my IMAX camera in my pocket. I just needed a microphone.
There you go. I went and bought one of these little like pocket things and just plugs into my phone now, guys. It's not that hard. I get it. It can be a challenge. Like I feel like there's probably somebody watching this who it's like, I don't even know where to start. Like it's almost like basically another language, right? Like you start talking about megapixels and things and okay. Well, that's where you hire somebody, I guess, right? It's like if you need a guide, if you need a mentor, I know that there's plenty of programs that people offer, but how do you kind of run your content days? Do you charge for those, or like what's been your kind of offering to people?
So it's kind of become my coffee meeting. The
Okay.
the way I'm supposed to reach people is by asking them to go to coffee. I'd rather, for me, I want to add value, right? Even if they don't start working with me, their business should be better after they meet with me,
Love it.
good, like it or not. That's what I want. So I just set up, they can come to my office. I've already got everything set up. Kind of, what do you want to talk about? Who do you want to reach? Kind of get through the psychology of it. I think that's another place we get lost is the messaging. So walk them through that. Okay, here's the process. I'm going to click start. You and I are just going to chat. I'm going to have you look at the camera once in a while to say things. We'll figure out what to say as we go. And then they leave. And then I take the footage. I upload it to the editor that I work with. They edit it. The agent pays for the editing. And then they deliver the videos to them.
That's awesome. One, I was just thinking to myself, like a lot of people are like, and actually, I'll pose this question to you because I feel like I've experienced this, but you have a lot more experience and you've helped other people with it. When you just start with your phone, right? Just start with what you have and stop making excuses. But then you make it better, right? Get a new camera, you actually hire that videographer, better microphone, whatever. Do people ever judge you for your previous content? Like, I guess from that psychological aspect you just mentioned, like, I feel like a lot of people get hung up like, oh, it's not perfect. Well, perfect doesn't exist. So let's get that over with. But for anyone out there who's like, oh my gosh, but what about like my old stuff? Have you ever run into that issue, Sean, where it's like somebody judged you for your older content?
No, that's a good
And
question.
how
I
do you
never.
walk people through that?
Well, no, that's a good. I was so when you asked it the first time, I was gonna say no, that no one's judged me, but it's the opposite of that. Is I've been complimented on how much better my new videos are. So it was a
Oh wow.
reverse. It's I got a compliment instead of getting judged, and I think
Yeah,
that in itself says why everyone should start. Is people watch your progression. It's the same as if I weighed 600 pounds and then I got down to 400, people aren't going to talk about how awful I used to look. They're going to say, dang, man, you look great. You really lost a lot of weight.
that's true.
I think it's the same thing.
That's awesome. No, I think a lot of people miss out on even capturing that component, which is the journey, right? I heard when I was in title insurance, I heard this other title rep teaching this class. So I'll use his analogy. I don't know if you have a different one, but you could think of social media as almost like a show about you, right? Like this is the Sean Herrero show. And people want to watch the show, right? And you can have a commercial whenever you want during the show, right? You just can't have 50% of the time you're running a commercial, right?
Yeah.
And that's where people are always posting, God forbid, their flyers on social media, but that happens. But then it's like you're always promoting your business. So I think that that's even a good point is it personalizes like that journey, right? And you just talked about all the things that are you're passionate about that are excited, that you do personally like hobbies. Would you agree with that, or do you have another way of kind of looking at that whole like concept of how much do you post about like your personal life and business, that kind of deal?
No, I think I really like that analogy specifically. Simon Sinek, there was a video I saw years ago that Simon Sinek did where he was talking about how businesses always make it about themselves. We have the most RAM, the most ROM, we're the best, we're the biggest, we're this, we're that. And that's what I think real estate by far, every real estate agent I ever met is in the top 1% or is 1% in their market or 1% on this street or 1% at this address. Is that why people should work with you? Because other people worked with you? And basically his message was make it about them, not about you, right? And that's what I try to do. So my flow for Instagram specifically is I only post reels in my feed. That's all the for them. And then my story is more of like I'll mix that with my personal life and I'll share my reels or thoughts of mortgage in there. But I'm probably the worst at asking for business. I just feel like if I put out good information and people see that I'm confident and solutions oriented, people are going to find me. And that again, I probably should ask more than I do, but we need to make it's not about us. Like we're here to help other people. So put out things that help them instead of saying how cool you are.
Yeah. Well,
Hey,
I
Sean, and
think kind of where we started, which is value creation, right? Like,
Yeah.
I was going to say, Eric, tell them about the line in the sand, unless you were
hold
going
on.
to say something else.
There's just something I wanted to say real quick is, Sean, I will tell you that something I had to learn after years of being the same way or feeling the same way you did was I always felt that if I was good enough at my job and people trusted me enough, then they would ask me if they needed me, right? But there was this one point where, I had this conversation with somebody and I essentially just said, well, why didn't you let me know? Or why didn't you give me a shot? I was just kind of curious. He's like, because you never asked me,
Yeah.
right? And it was at that point where I'm like, there's still a way to ask without being, obviously push you're feeling awkward, but just like it's difficult to be on camera, asking it in a way that comes across as completely authentic, and you actually doing it because you care, not because you're trying to force an action. Once you get there, it becomes a lot easier. But it's definitely probably something that would be an additive.
Yeah, I shouldn't assume that people are going to reach out, and I'll say that's kind of a weakness for me is asking for business. But
I mean, what you're doing, I think, is creating that reciprocity for sure, right? Which getting into the whole value creation, right? Like versus just being good at your job, right? And selling the same, 30-year fix with cheese that everybody else is selling, right? Differentiate, obviously. But yeah, I think that like I remember when I was doing strictly business development and you did biz dev, right, John? Like with Ryan Grant and his team, like I would just tell people right away, like, if I'm not worth keeping around, right? Like my goal is to create value for you, right? Like if I wouldn't keep myself around if I was just asking for something. So I think you're doing an amazing job creating value for people. So many people could learn really from what you're doing. We only have a few more minutes left. So Eric, any
Yeah.
other final thoughts, questions you wanted to ask Sean?
No, I think that what's nice about having conversations like this is you start to see people get more and more into content as it seems to be the way this business is going. Everybody's kind of pushing it, but I if you had advice for somebody that is like just getting started, or even people that have been doing it for a while, if it's just this broad information about what the content should look like or how it should be targeted, like what's the best advice you give to the general public?
Um, make it your own. Do what. Don't try. I don't. This is so cliche, but it's like, um, everyone else is taken. Just be yourself. But I mean, quality matters. Like, don't just ramble on about nonsense, but try and find ways to be yourself and be as authentic as possible. Everything to me comes back to being unapologetically authentic, and that's what I think. If just general public, not even talking real estate or mortgage, just be yourself. Like, we don't need to fake it. Just start there, and everything else will be easier because you're not trying to pretend.
Awesome. I think that it goes without saying, but you know what? I'm going to say the quiet part out loud. This is called the From Experience podcast. And I don't think maybe it has escaped someone out there that you actually have to have the experience. So if you're not doing it, if you're not, to Sean's point, just failing, right? Fell forward, right? If you're just like loans, right? Like if you want to be a good loan officer, guess what? Like be a student of your craft, learn loans, and be good at submitting clean files, right? I think that you have to get that experience. So for what that's worth, I hope you learned something from this, guys. And Sean, really appreciate you making the time to come on here, share your wisdom, experience with everyone. If you got something from this, guys, please leave a like, share it with somebody who needs to level up their content, like Sean's mom did. But it's okay. She's good now, right, Sean?
She's great. She's
Okay.
not comfortable, but I don't. No one ever. I'm not comfortable either. It still gets
Oh yeah,
awkward.
that doesn't
Trust
go
me.
away,
But
right?
but
Yeah.
she's like, I know how to do this now.
There's so many pro tips I feel like you could just throw in there, right? But it doesn't get easier, right? Like I would say it gets easier, but it doesn't go away. Maybe is a better way of saying some of that. Like I forget who I heard talking about it, but like when it doesn't matter when celebrities or other people go out on stage, they're probably still nervous, right? So it's like just accept that you're nervous
Yeah. I
and then
think
go
it
do it
gets
anyway.
easier, but it's still on my board as a to-do list because it doesn't just get done. But
Right
the
on.
process gets easier, but it's very easy to not do it.
The easy things in life are easy not to do. There you
Mhm.
go. We should end with that cliche quote.
Perfect.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for making the time. Eric, Sean, everyone who got something from this, we appreciate you.